Hi, welcome back to Ask a CFO and the second part of my conversation with Emmalene Maxwell, CFO at The Fold. I'm Sophie Jackson, and Ask a CFO is a podcast series brought to you by the Treasury Today Group. Throughout the series, I'm seeking to shine a light on the different paths taken to become Chief Financial Officer, exploring the personal journeys and professional development of CFOs across the world. In today's episode, as I said, I'm rejoined by Emmalene Maxwell. As our conversation was so good, I wanted to make sure you all got to hear as much of it as possible. In this second part, we'll be exploring Emmy's thoughts on the responsibility of managing people, how to look after yourself and recharge your batteries, networks and community, as well as exploring the role of CFO itself and how that's evolving. And finally, Emmy will be offering advice for aspiring CFOs across the world. One of the things that I think is important to reflect on is that becoming successful and getting to that top level, which you've got to, comes with other measures of success that you need to implement for yourself, like learning how to look after yourself, learning how to manage the stress. And I think people who are aspiring to that role in the environment that we're in now, it's no longer the safe, secure, steady function that it may well have been for, let's be honest, a specific type of person in, up till the noughties. So what are some of the ways in which you kind of draw on your own reserves or manage your own energies in order to be able to cope with that? Because you are in probably one of the most volatile sectors, as you've said. And so that involves being calm and looking after yourself. And I think as I'm getting older, I'm realizing more and more that is also a responsibility, as well as looking after the team and coming up with great ideas, is to manage your own energy, to feel holistically well. Like, so what are some of the tips that you have or advice that you have for how to deal with being calm when everything is crazy around you and you need to project a strong leadership energy?
Yeah. I mean, I just want to pick up on something you said there, Sophie. I think you're absolutely right about that sort of leadership role, and particularly in finance. You're no longer just looking at the numbers, reporting the news. I think founders, CEOs, whoever you're working with, whatever leadership team you're in, they're now looking to that CFO for a much broader role. You need to be able to discuss your marketing metrics, your customer metrics, your product margins, as confidently as any of the experts in those areas. So you're absolutely right. The breadth of the role has changed. And that also then comes with, more and more changes that you have to be able to cope with and roll with, because it's from multiple fronts. And that is really challenging. I think as well, unfortunately, in finance, is part and parcel of the role is reporting bad news. Earlier in my career, I found that really difficult. You feel so personally responsible.
Yeah.
And I think I have sometimes, when I've been reporting, I've maybe softened the message or changed the message to make it seem slightly less bad. But that will 100% come back and bite you after a little while. So I think over time I've learned to try and be factual and remember that actually this is a group effort. This is a team. If you're reporting to the board, for example, actually, board, we could do with your help here. And I think making sure that you're prepared with the key messages, don't change the message, don't soften it, and also be able to communicate well with your board. So if they're, no one likes a surprise. So if something happens, if you've got whoever you've got a good relationship with on the board, give them a call. Yeah. I think probably that's sort of, I suppose that's more on the reporting the bad news. In terms of sort of general stress, I decided very early on in my career that I would be a yes finance person, not a no finance person, because I had an experience of a no finance person as a leader in one of my roles. And I just really struggled with how he dealt with the rest of the business and how he sort of supported or didn't support them. So I very early on realised that is not the type of finance person I want to be. And I want to be a force for positive change and positive discussion and collaboration. So I always have known that is the type of leader I want to be. So I think I just try to remind myself of that actually the reason I have been able to do what I've been able to do in my career is because I am that yes and positive and problem solver and solution finder and executor of making things happen. So that is a way for me to sort of remind myself that actually this is the reason I've done well, is because people have responded very well to that and they've seen the value of that. So it's really important I keep that up. And I make sure, I want to make sure that I am that person for whoever it is in the business, whether it be the founder, the leadership team, my team, the rest of the business. I always want to be that face of positivity and working together and collaboration. So yeah, I sort of draw quite a lot of energy from that. And I draw a lot of energy from my team, the team at the Fold as well. They're amazing people and I feel so lucky to work with them. So if I can do anything to help them and they're stressed or if they've got a problem and I can step in and try and help them, I get a lot of energy from that as well.
And then what do you do to recharge your batteries and to get your positive energy? Are there things that you like to do outside of work that help you to galvanize you ready for the next day?
Yeah, I think it's probably quite normal things. I like to exercise and have a bit of downtime. I'm not one of these people who is, please don't take me as one of these people who's like up at 5 a.m. going for a run every day, because that is not what I'm saying. I maybe make it to the gym or for a swim like once every 3 weeks, but I really value that time. And I also, lucky I've got a lovely little girl, little toddler. I mean, that's not necessarily downtime, and it very much depends on what mood she's in. I really take a lot of joy from her and really sort of friends and family. And I think I like to spend time with people. So I actually have found probably in the last few years particularly the value of a network, incredibly healing and cathartic, and really having other people who are experiencing the same things as you, or going or having been through something with you, or people that you can relate to in similar either roles or positions or whatever it might be. I have found that absolutely revolutionary actually for me in the last few years, being able to lean on others, and I get a lot of energy from that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that's best about this moment in time is, as we try and kind of dismantle old structures that benefited only certain people, like if you've got the time and the energy to commit to your own development and like your own support system, there's really never been more accessible groups with kind of really easy entry fees and things like that, and events that are really accessible. If you can't afford to come to the talk, you can watch it online and then you can connect on LinkedIn with everyone afterwards. I think even from like the most junior leaving university or leaving school, thinking about what they might want to do, there are so many ways to gain access to like a plethora of professionals. And I think that is the real game changer. And as you say, those networks are on a personal as well as professional level so important to see your own experiences mirrored back and to learn how other people cope with certain situations and problem solve as a group, I think is so powerful.
I'm just agreeing with you. You're so right. And it's a really good time to be able to lean on networks because there is so much out there now.
Yeah, and you can do things that you wouldn't necessarily have had access to before, like in the pandemic. Yeah. I write as well, and I was working with a friend on a screenplay, but like that's not my background. I would be more traditional publishing. And I went along to the BAFTA talks that you invited me to online. You can ask questions. Like it was absolutely amazing that you can have that level of access.
Yeah, that is absolutely incredible. And does that just make such a difference to you as well? I think that networking piece can be quite daunting, particularly not like the early part of your career.
Yeah, so
particularly if the networks aren't sort of, I think what's great now is there's so many authentic networks. It's not networking for network's sake. They've actually genuinely got a purpose, or their cohorts are specific, or they do some incredible events. And I really struggled with it early on in my career. First, I didn't feel like I had anything to say to anyone, so it was very daunting. And secondly, it did feel a bit sort of like lip service. Whereas, like you say, there are some just really great groups out there that everyone can access. So that has been, really game changing for me.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I like is, even though I'm very fond of talking and it's my job, I don't enjoy networking without a purpose. I don't like going to big parties where I don't know anyone, and I'm not where I get my joy or my pleasure. So I struggled too. So I'll go to this drinks event and just network. I'm like, well, what does that mean? What am I networking about? Why?
Yeah.
And I found it quite cynical, because it's like, I'm here to expand my network of useful people. Are you a useful person? And especially because I started out in fashion, it is really like that. They're like, who are you? Who do you know? All right, next. And so it just really left me cold with the whole thing. And so what I like now is, if people come to me for advice who are more introvert, I'm like, well, go to one which is more practical. Like, we're going to this talk about this topic. Is it something you're passionate about? If it is, write down 3 things you liked about what that person said. And then you can go up to them after and say, I loved you said this. I loved you said this. Do you have any advice about this? Like, if you're very intentional, it takes away the kind of inauthentic hustler kind of style. And like, it makes people, you're building organic relationships then, rather, because I think networking implies an inauthenticity, which doesn't need to have. And as you say, I mean, you're involved with the group Nova, which Billy O'Connor runs, and I think that's an example of something similar to what we do with Women in Treasury, which is to really create a community rather than just to bring important people together, but it's actually a community.
Absolutely. I think that community word is really important. And the Nova community has done that so well. Even I was on a Nova call this morning, and some of the things I've even talked to you today was some of the things that we were talking about. So
yeah, amazing,
relevant, and shared experiences, and just really genuine sort of relationships and friendships, which is really nice.
Fabulous. And then we're talking for the podcast for Ask a CFO, which is about the path that you get to become the CFO. And one of the things that I found quite fun when speaking with the different interviewees is the idea of like what you thought something was going to be versus what it actually ends up being. And everyone's had different answers to this. So tell me, did you have any preconceptions about the role? What aspects what you were expecting? And was there anything that took you by surprise or was totally different than you were expecting?
That is a really good question. I think probably a couple of things sort of stand out. And it's maybe more because of the type of companies I've worked in, and probably also maybe an implication of what maybe I probably wouldn't be an appropriate CFO for other types of companies. But I think what I've loved, but also is probably maybe different because I am in a small company, is how hands-on I can be. So actually being in the weeds with the team, doing work, setting up the reconciliations or doing the bank runs or whatever it might be. Even at Charlotte Tilbury, I had to go pay checks in. So actually sort of really being at the coalface was really nice. It's probably one of the big reasons I left Charlotte Tilbury then, because I was quite far away from the coalface and like being in the detail and in the weeds. And so I think probably sort of how hands-on you can be if you choose to be is quite nice. And I think probably the other one, I've sort of touched on it already, but how broad that role really truly is not just finance. You're not just doing the management accounts and presenting those numbers. You have to be in that detail. You have to be so knowledgeable about the rest of the business. The board are looking at you and the CEO, and the CEO has their skill set, and you're expected to pick up the other part of that skill set. So, the CEO is probably sort of that more vision, the strategy, thinking ahead of what you need to do for the company. And you're the executor of some of that. So I think, what I've loved about being in my finance roles, because I'm actually inherently a really nosy person. So actually being a CFO has really suited me, because it means I have an excuse to sort of, insert myself into the product meetings or the merchandising meetings, and really get to understand it. And I think that's been brilliant for me. So yeah, I think it's sort of this misconception that CFO is just the numbers, and that just ain't true these days.
Yeah. I like it. You said being nosy. I think if I was being kind, I would say perhaps being curious.
Curious might be a better word.
Yeah, being curious, and especially being, like open-minded and intellectually curious, I truly believe is like a skill set that everyone should be focused on. Like we're losing the art of diplomacy because we're no longer so interested in other people's perspectives. And as you said, the reason you're doing so well and that you're thriving in this role is because you are genuinely engaged and interested in what everyone else is doing and in learning. And being fresh. And I think that's something that's so underrated as a skill set, not so being authoritative, being curious, you know?
You're absolutely right, Sophie. But, the people who are typically sort of proactive and they might see a gap or an issue or something wrong with the process and they're just like, well, I'm going to fix that. Those are the people who I, for one, value so much in my organisations that I work in. People who they see that issue and they want to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And just people who challenge and question and want to sort of be part of the growth story and drive it, be part of the drive, I think is, like you say, it's a really, really valuable skill set.
Yeah, that's something that we say in our business because we're small and we've had to evolve very rapidly, and we've taken on so many new projects across the world. And we've said, our mantra is to be solution oriented rather than process oriented, because I think process and getting stuck in how things have been done is a surefire way that no one's business is going to thrive in the future. But it does involve a kind of a mindset shift and being comfortable with an element of constant risk and fear and so on. I guess in your role, that must be absolutely way more true than it is in my situation.
Yeah, we talk a lot in the fold about being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, sure.
So always challenging status quo, willing to take risks. You learn the most from your failures as well, right? So it's all part of a learning journey. So yeah, I think that is a really important sort of way to think about things, for sure.
And then when we think of the role of CFO, I mean, obviously you're in quite a unique sector space and company, but I do think you will have seen a shift in any case over the course of your career. How do you think that role is changing? How have you seen the role evolve, particularly in recent years? I mean, in the advent of AI, everyone's concerned with how their job function is evolving. And off the back of that, what skills would you say are needed to become a modern leading CFO? Particularly, let's stick within your space, because I think it's so specific.
Yeah, I think probably thinking about being dynamic is a really important skill set, being able to roll with the punches. I think being able to turn things into an opportunity and try to think around the problems is probably quite important as well. I think the other thing for my industry, so something that Dimitri Pinsent used to say is, you need to, we're building the plane while we're flying the plane, which I've taken, and that is just so true. So you do have to be quite resilient because you're having to try and balance the day to day with the longer term. So trying to fit that in is really challenging.
And then finally, one of the things that we want to achieve with the podcast is to really open up access to a whole bigger universe. I think a lot of these very highly sought after careers are a little bit unclear how you get there, how might you start. And especially for very young people, I really want them to feel like, anything's possible and there is a pathway to everything. It's not only for certain few. So what advice would you give to those who are, let's say, not even just starting out their career, like just starting out in life and thinking about their aspirations? Like, what are things to bear in mind? Because the truth is, some of these roles are certainly not for everyone, but they are for some people, and you might well have the key skills that you can build on to get there. So tell me a little bit about what you think about that.
Sure. Well, I can tell you right now, Sophie, that little Emmalene Maxwell that was sat in her high school, academic, but suffered from bullying most of her school life. I can tell you right now, she did not think she would ever be a CFO, and like I said, was not even it wasn't even sort of an aspiration to be a CFO. And I think probably what I would say to people starting out is, firstly, there are so many careers out there. I personally, when I was at school, I didn't even know they existed. I saw my mum, stepdad, and my dad, and they were sort of my choices. And I think young people these days are under so much pressure to make. I certainly felt like the degree I chose, the companies I was working for, they were dictating the rest of my life, and I felt really trapped by that. Like I said to you, finance isn't necessarily my passion. And in my early career, I was like, oh my God, what have I done here? And I think probably just recognizing that your career is a journey, whatever path you might go on, and that journey requires lots of different steps. whatever step you're on is going to be valuable. You will learn something from it, be it something from a negative experience or a positive experience. And it doesn't necessarily dictate where you're going to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I think I can't remember the exact stat, but I think it's something like half the people alive today are going to live to 100. So that means we are going to be able to have 2 or 3 different careers. I'm banking on it. I'm planning a second career already. I think just try not to put too much pressure on yourself. Don't stress too much if your first job isn't that exact stepping stone that you thought it should be to get to wherever you want. And I think just be open-minded and try different things, because everything will be valuable. I'm so grateful for all the learning experiences I had, whether they were positive or negative, because I have learned something from all of them.
Absolutely. And a really good point. So I think when we're very destination oriented, sometimes like when I was younger, I had this idea of I'm going to get to that point and I hadn't really thought beyond it. And when you get there and it's not fulfilling your every desire, you then feel like, oh my goodness, well, I didn't plan beyond here. I'm meant to now have reached nirvana in terms of fulfillment. So I think that idea that destinations change constantly is correct one. And as you say, we're all going to have several career iterations, and that's super exciting. And it gives you a chance to just constantly evolve. And that's the way to stay curious, engaged, and upskilling and, enlightened.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. There's so many opportunities out there now. So to do lots of different things. So try some different things as well.
Yeah.
Whether it be career or in your personal life. So.
And then are there any final things you would give advice on, or any final tips or insights you want to share?
I think probably for other people in finance, really in this sort of current world, is finance can feel quite like a lonely place. I think sometimes you feel very responsible. You have access to all of the numbers. You can see how good or how bad it is, and you obviously can't always share certain things that are going on, so it can feel like it's quite a lonely place. But I think by leaning on your network and your peers at your work and making sure that you're open with your relationships and building a really good network, that can massively help you. So if there's anyone listening to this who wants to chat about the troubles and strifes of retail, I'd really encourage anyone to reach out, because I'm really happy to chat, and it can be a very cathartic experience. So don't feel like you're alone. There is always someone who has been there, done that, going through it time. So don't lose sight of that. In the grand scheme of things, we're all very small in the universe as well. So recognizing that can sometimes help you sort of realize tomorrow's probably going to be a better day.
Yeah, and I think that resonates so much with what you were saying around like the power of your network as well.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, I've leaned so much on the Nova community and a couple of other networks that I've joined in recent years. It's just so nice to know that you're not the only one. I think you're reinventing the wheel all the time, but actually it's all been done before.
Yeah, and I think it's hard sometimes when I don't have any friends that are like running a similar company or in a similar space. And so you don't want to be in the middle of a dinner party for 2 hours talking about some problem you're having with work. It's very tedious and it's not what you're there for. But then as you said, things can become quite lonely. So I think that's such a strong point to make, and like a very generous offer for people to reach out.
Very happy to have a coffee or a chat with anybody. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Emmy. It's really been a true pleasure. Thank you for taking part and for sharing your experiences. And yes, keep in touch. And thank you again.
Thank you so much, Sophie. It's been an absolute pleasure and a real honour. So thank you.
Thank you so much to Emmalene for taking part in our Ask a CFO series. I hope that her journey and insights will resonate with you. And to all professional women, I cannot recommend her company, The Fold, highly enough. They make unique and standout professional attire for women with style and power in equal measure. So do go take a look at The Fold. Since we recorded that amazing interview between myself and Emmalene, we're very happy to announce that she's been promoted and is now operating as CFO and COO at The Fold. So congratulations to Emmalene, and really excited to see where she goes next on her journey. Stay tuned and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from, as we'll be regularly releasing further episodes with an array of different CFOs located across the world. Thank you so much, and please do join me again.